Hey nature lovers, welcome to Log Cabin Leather by Jan. I'm here in the basement of my home to share with you today how I create my nature themed leather products that are different than anything you've seen out there on the market. I'm going to tell you about how my nature themed products have changed over the decades. I started in 1977, what the new products are, and then I'm going to kind of guide you through how I create some of these products basically step by step, what's involved in making them, and tell you about some other videos and so forth and other places that you can find information about my products and other videos and so forth. So, once again, my name is Jan Hibbard. I've been making handmade leather goods since 1977. Over the decades, many of my products have revolved around nature-themed items. I'm here in New Hampshire, so moose, bear, deer, loons on the lake. My mother was a bird lover, so many of my things are involve birds and so forth. But what I've made over the years has changed drastically, and for a while I was kind of losing my way because the things that I enjoyed making so much, and I enjoyed painting. I really enjoyed painting the leather, which is part of what makes my things so unique, is the intricate detail, is that people weren't buying the things. So here is my catalog I made in 1978. I'm not sure how this is showing up on camera because I can't see. Has a loon on it, my favorite bird. It's held up for 47 years now. Many of the products, again, that I made way back then were book covers. If you look through here, I have tons and tons of book covers. A lot of them with loons, notebooks, binders, address books, appointment books, wallets, address books, checkbook covers, all different kinds of books. These are some of the first books I ever made for my mother were birds because she loved birds. And again, this is not going to really show on camera. But, so, the theme of the books and so forth. But as the years have gone by, people don't use books anymore. They don't, cherish things like that anymore. We're in a disposable world. All my books that I had been making were refillable with the disposable notebooks. But still, people didn't get the value in buying something that's going to last you your lifetime, literally. So I kind of lost my way because it's like, I want to make the nature-themed things, but what can I do? I started making a few tote bags and so forth, and that went okay. But again, the larger items are not something that everybody has a disposable income for, and the places I sell in, that isn't all that effective. I don't have any luck on Facebook or things like that. It just isn't working for me anymore. It did for a while, but then the algorithms changed, and I don't get any attention on Facebook whatsoever now. So it's kind of a waste of time. So I, had a hard time. So finally, my inspiration by where I work at Mount Kearsarge Indian Museum, so the Native American community and feathers, I started making, I think in 2019, a line of feather jewelry. They look like real feathers made out of leather, and that was really the beginning of my new product line with Inspired by Nature. In more recent years, the feather design has developed into more of home decor items. I really do use a book on feathers. It tells me the shape and so forth of the feathers. If you notice, I have all these places marked are the shapes of the feather I'm using that goes with the bird that's on that page. So I have all different things like that. So we have the chickadee, so that's the shape of one of the chickadee feathers with the chickadees in it. Things like that. So these really have, the birds and the butterflies for a long time have inspired me. These for a while I was making, but my last collection of these was done last fall, or I think the fall before that, and they were kind of all winter themed. So the trees did not have any branches on them, leaves, anything like that. So this spring I decided to make it more into a spring collection where you're seeing the greenery on the trees at the top and so forth. Also working on making them a little bit more dimensional, like a lot of my butterfly jewelry has dimension to it. So I'm working on that as well for some of these. So again, I'm not sure how well these show on this camera. So those are some of the things. These are all bird inspired. So I had a collection. I was just doing the great horned owl. The red-tailed hawk was a newer one. But I've revised some of the feathers, and like I said, so I'm making them into spring collections. So doing some of the same birds I did before: bluebird, blue jay, cardinal. The owls were real popular, eagle, things like that, and updating it with the spring collection. So that's something I'm working on. I've also have nature inspired things that entitled by like moose, bear, deer, things like that. So I had a winter collection related to that kind of thing. But first of all, whenever I'm making any of these things, so this was bison decor. These are some bracelets I'm just starting to work on now. Just made that pattern today. So everything that I make first starts with a pattern. If you notice, these things have quite a bit of detail. They're very intricate. They are not things that I could be able to cut out on my own. So first of all, I have to draw the pattern, and that's the hardest part. That is by far the hardest part, because I have to draw it, and then if I draw it and it isn't dark enough, it doesn't come out, and I have to tell it where to cut and trace, and so sometimes I have to do the lines in different colors. So like this pattern actually produced quite easily. I try to find pictures online. I use coloring book pictures, things like that. I need simple kind of sketches, but still that's something that shows the detail. And then I try to find a picture that, in color, so that I'll see how to paint it afterwards. And so this actually scanned very easily into, I have to scan the picture into my Glowforge so it will know how to cut it. And once I do that, I can cut it out. And so that is actually the owl that's on this, made much smaller. You can see I have a little tiny mouse down here. I don't know if that shows on the camera. He's about to get. So the hardest part, so that one worked fairly well. This one I tried to do not so well, because see how this line is dark? It doesn't know which to cut and which to engrave. And that's where doing patterns like this, they're not separate files, they're not separate images. One layer it's not separate layers. So I can't separate the layers to tell it to cut this one and engrave that one. So that's part of my problem. So by doing it different colors, this one, again, I tried to do it that way and it didn't come out because some of these lines are still too dark. So I had to try to trace it, draw it. So I'm really kind of recreating them myself. It really depends on the pattern. So that is the hardest part. Once I got the pattern made to my satisfaction, and again, on some things, it's different because, again, this is the same pattern here as it is here. If it gets really fine, these lines get really, really thin, and then it's too fine, and it will break. Or like antennas on a butterfly, when they get really, really tiny. When I'm making the butterflies this size, the antennas, are too tiny to stay on the pieces of jewelry anymore. So it depends on what I'm making, and so forth. It all starts with a pattern. Have to draw it, have to get the machine to know which line I want to cut, which lines I want it to engrave, if that's what I'm doing. Now, a lot of these patterns I'm doing for the feathers, I'm strictly having it cut. So that's easier. All the lines it needs to cut. So that's a little bit easier to get it to do it. It's when I want it to engrave, where I try to get it to do a bird. Like on this one, it didn't quite get the detail in the feathers over there. So if I want that in there, I'll have to add that in myself. Things like that. Or I can revise the pattern and try to go over it. It takes a lot of time to go back and forth and try to get them the right way. So once I've got the pattern done, then I scan it into my machine. Once it picks up what I want it to, then it will show me on the screen under the piece of equipment where I put the piece of leather, and then I can resize the pattern and print it. I change some of the settings and so forth. So that's what I'll be showing you in a minute. So once I get the pattern scanned into my computer, which is right here, you can see I have some patterns. These are the things I just did. Was a leaf and a butterfly. It's going to be bracelets. You can lightly see on the right-hand side of the screen an outline of a leaf. That actually is what I'm scanning. It's not showing very well on this picture, but that is what I'm going to scan. I have my machine over here. in the corner. Of course, I haven't turned it on, so I'm going to have to wait a minute. And then once that's ready, I will scan it into the machine and it will cut it out. So the machine is just to the right-hand side over here in the corner. So I'm going to have to give it a second, and then I will show you what happens from here. Now that the print is scanned into the machine and the machine is ready to go, this white light is flashing, you can see here. That means that I have a go and it's ready to do its thing. So I press that button and it will tell me on the computer how long it will take that to print. It is rather loud. It's going to take 5 minutes for it to print a couple of those. This printing is up here in the corner, so see, this is where I also don't have the ability to tell it, because really what it should do is cut the interior lines first so that it won't raise up or whatever, and then count the exterior lines second. But I don't have the ability to tell it which lines to cut first because I cannot separate it into separate individual tasks or layers like you would in some other projects. That's the one thing I do not know how to do. I mean, if I put pictures together on something, yes, one is a different layer and I can move one in front of the other, but I don't know how to do that to make a file to use for this piece of equipment. So that's where my knowledge and self-taught, since I'm self-taught, I don't really have anybody to rely on to ask questions about that. So I have to rely on what I can figure out myself. So this is how I do it. But again, it's not perfect, but it gets me what I want. So I'm going to give that a couple more minutes to finish printing, and then I'll get back with you. Once the items are all finished, then I come over to the machine and I can take them out. And by rights, they just kind of pop out. And then I can take them. I do have to clean out these little fragments. I have a little vacuum that'll do that. I can still put a little something over in this corner, so if I have some birds or anything that I need for this, I will do those there. I'm going to shut the equipment off now, and then what I'm going to do with these is I am going to take these, now it's going to be too dark over here, I'm going to take these to the other side of the room where I am going to paint them. Once the item is cut on the machine, I bring it over here, which is where I am going to carve it and paint it. On this I have to poke out, you know, the little cuttings, but basically like paper cutouts that will pop right out. But as I said, if the lines are too thinnest, I get into these small items here, which is what I wasn't sure on this pattern because this is my first time making it. I wasn't sure how it would work on the tiny ones. So once I've got it cut out, then I do have to carve it a little bit. So I'm going to cut lines to outline this shape because that's supposed to kind of look like it's inside the leather. So I have this mat over here so I don't ruin my tools. So really you just have to dampen these, and I realize that's going to be off camera. So you have a swivel knife. And again, because I'm going to try to make this look like a feather, I'm going to finish this line in around here. Which really isn't much. It's going to go up through here. But I don't want to hit the knife into the table because that will dull it. You can see I'm drawing those lines in there. And then of course, because this is supposed to be a feather, we have to do the top of the feather. The stem or whatever you call it on the feather. So I'll do that on both of these. And then I'm going to stamp some tools on the tree and so forth, and paint the birds and add them in here. So again, I'm not going to go through everything on camera because I think it's kind of boring, but next I'm going to carve these this way because I'm trying to make the trees and stuff look like they're in behind kind of the feather. Kind of like it's a shadow box. I'll carve the real part of the feather up there. Put any other lines for the picture so it looks like it's... And this is just called a bevel, and it's just making that line that I just cut with that knife. I have to be careful where it's real thin because if I do that too hard, I'll cut through the leather. So again, I'm not sure if that shows on the camera, but that makes that look like it's in a little bit. I mean, the fence could have a little more detail, but because of the size of it, I really don't see the point. Then you add the texture to the trees. I still have to go ahead and do the top of this feather. And then it will be ready to paint, would be the next step. Well, actually, now I have to make the feather parts on it. So to make it really look like a feather, I use this tool called, it's really called a hair blade. And again, I really need to go on my table over there so I don't hit this. And I'm sure that doesn't show on the camera, it makes lines so it really does look like a feather. So that will be next, and next after that will be the painting. Now that the pieces have been punched out and the carving is finished, now it's time to start painting. So now I've selected the little cardinals that will be on this. Will be male and female. These are a little bit too big for this project, so those I'll put away. And so the 4 birds there and this. So now it's time to begin to paint the feather. So the first thing I usually do is paint the back of them. So that's not very exciting. And again, I just put a light coat of paint on the back of the feathers. And quickly around the edges. And then I'm going to paint the front of them. Front of the feather again, there's a cardinal feather, so there's not a lot of color to them other than the red, so it's not, a little bit of black will be mixed in with it, darken it in places. And that's sometimes what's nice about the way the Glowforge cuts it, because it has a little bit of the black in edges, and sometimes that's nice because it kind of gives it that darkened edges. Again, the cardinal is pretty much just cardinal red, and so not a whole lot of, like I said, I'll add a little bit of black into it in some places to darken it a little bit. Usually like one side of the feather is a little darker than the other. But for right now, we'll do that. The little birds I usually do afterwards. I could do them at the same time, but I don't always. Now, again, trees. And these little things, the only thing I do try to get the edges of the trees. Because they are black, so I try to make them more the realistic color of the tree. This one up here I get a little red on, so. And basically the item is painted. Once it is painted, and again, so there won't be a whole lot, like I said, a little more black on that. The fence is going to stay the natural color of these, I guess, will be birch trees, so I will do the trunks of the trees in white. And that pretty much is going to be it. Once the birch tree dries, then I add the little black lines on them, and then it will be ready to have the birds added to it. So once I paint this, then I paint the little birdies, and then I usually have one face in each direction in these, and one will be down here, and one will be up in the tree, and that will pretty much be it. So again, I can paint the edges of the trees for the birch. I'll add some little black lines to the birch afterwards. I'll finish painting that up, and that's pretty much gonna be how I finish these. So now I'm painting the little tiny birds. The female cardinals are more goldish in color, because they all have the black along their faces. When I try to paint the little birds, I do try to get the edges, just because I think it strengthens the pieces. So we'll make two females. Again, it's just a matter of painting. Cardinals are one of the easier ones to paint, because the female is mostly this gold color and will have a little bit of the reddish tinge to it. The black on the face is the hardest, because it's a small area. So that will be about it. And like I said, once these are dry, then they will be attached to the wing. Will be a little bit darker in color. Will be shaded down a little bit. That's going to be about it. So now, if you're interested in my products, these videos I'm making are not really intended to really teach you how to make what I'm making, because everything is one of a kind, and obviously if you don't have the Glowforge or something to cut the patterns, but it is to show you what I make and the details that go into it. If you're interested in checking out any of my products, please go to logcabinleatherbyjan.com. If you're interested in getting a discount off of some products, then join my email, there's a link right on the home page there, and sign up for my email, and you get a 20% discount off of your first order, plus discounts on other offers and things I have, sales I have, and things like that. If you're on my email list, you get the best deals. So I would suggest you join my email, but check out my website, logcabinleatherbyjan.com, and you can see all these beautiful products. In addition to the nature themed things, I also have the hand tooled belts, custom fit, and things like that. If you know friends and people that might be interested, I would really appreciate that, because anything you can do to help a small business grow would be really helpful to me. So I would appreciate that. So once again, logcabinleatherbyjan.com. If you like these videos, please give me a thumbs up, a like. Comments are really the best, because those really help a business grow. So I would appreciate that if you could do that. And thank you very much. I will be making more videos about the different things I make. If you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear them. And thank you very much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.